The first time Benjamin Cruz walked through the towering glass doors of the Whitmore mansion, he didn't expect his heart to shatter and heal in the same place. The mansion loomed like a frozen palace, beautiful, cold, and painfully silent. Inside lived Evelyn Whitmore, the 27-year-old paralyzed millionaire whose name carried both admiration and pity throughout the city. People said she was brilliant but broken, rich but unreachable. Assistants came and went, all leaving before the week was over. But Ben, a single father with a tired smile and calloused hands, was different. He wasn't there for the money. He was there because he needed a second chance just as much as she did. That if you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts, because stories like this remind us how love can grow in the unlikeliest places. When Evelyn's accident made headlines 3 years earlier, the world saw her as a tragic success story. A tech prodigy who had built a multi-million-dollar company before her spinal cord injury left her paralyzed from the neck down. What the cameras didn't show were the endless days of frustration, the sleepless nights, and the quiet tears she shed when her body refused to obey her mind. Every assistant who came into her life left within days, some running away from her sharp tongue, others unable to bear the weight of her pain. Evelyn had grown used to people giving up. In her mind, it was easier to push them away before they could disappoint her. Benjamin was not the kind of man who belonged in mansions. He was a mechanic, or at least he used to be, before his workshop shut down. After losing his wife 2 years ago to cancer, his world revolved around his 6-year-old daughter, Rosie. The job at the Whitmore mansion wasn't glamorous, but it promised stability, and for Rosie's sake, he'd take anything. When the agency called, he accepted immediately, unaware of the rumors surrounding Evelyn. The first morning, Evelyn didn't even look at him when he entered her sunlit room. She sat near the window in her wheelchair, motionless except for her eyes, sharp, intelligent, but guarded. "They sent another one," she said flatly, her voice smooth but brittle. Ben didn't respond with sympathy or nervous chatter like the others. Instead, he nodded and got to work, organizing her medicine schedule, adjusting her wheelchair height, and checking her breathing monitor. His silence seemed to irritate her at first. Then, strangely, it calmed her as the days passed. Ben noticed little things. How Evelyn's eyes lingered on the piano in the corner of the room, but never asked for it to be played. How she always dismissed her meals after a few bites, and how she flinched whenever anyone mentioned her former company. He didn't pry, but he didn't walk on eggshells either. When she snapped at him for moving her blanket an inch too high, he didn't storm out like the others. He simply said, "You can yell at me if it helps, but I'm not going anywhere." That was the first time Evelyn truly looked at him. Rosie sometimes waited for her father in the car after school until Evelyn, surprisingly, insisted she come inside. The little girl, with her bright eyes and fearless curiosity, filled the mansion with something Evelyn hadn't felt in years: life. Rosie would chatter about her drawings and her mommy in heaven, and one day she told Evelyn, "Daddy says you're like the sun, but hiding behind clouds." Evelyn laughed for the first time in months. It was quiet and broken, but it was real. Evelyn began to open up, not with words at first, but with trust. She allowed Ben to adjust her posture without flinching. She let him help her eat when her hand trembled too much to control the spoon. Sometimes he caught her watching Rosie draw near the window, her face softening in ways she didn't understand. One evening, when Ben was about to leave, Evelyn said quietly, "You lasted longer than anyone." He smiled. "Maybe I'm just too stubborn." As weeks turned into months, a strange friendship formed. Ben never treated her like a fragile doll, and Evelyn never pitted his struggles. They spoke late at night, about life before the accident, about Rosie's dreams, about the fear of losing everything and still having to wake up the next day. Beneath the surface, both carried invisible wounds. Evelyn's were physical and emotional. Ben's were the kind that came from holding everything together when your heart was falling apart. One morning, Evelyn asked him to take her outside. It was a bright, windy day, the kind she used to love. The garden, untouched for years, was overgrown and wild. "My mother used to grow tulips here," she said softly. Ben picked up a small trowel and smiled. "Then let's bring them back." For the next few weeks, he and Rosie worked together, planting rows of tulip bulbs while Evelyn watched. Slowly, color returned to the garden and to her life. When the first bloom appeared, Evelyn whispered, "I thought I'd never see them again." But just when hope began to settle in, reality struck hard. One night, Evelyn's old business partner arrived unannounced, offering her a deal to sell her remaining shares and move on. He spoke as if she were a burden, a reminder of what the company lost. Ben watched Evelyn's face harden, her hands trembling as she struggled to maintain composure. After he left, she broke down for the first time in front of Ben, sobbing helplessly. "They all think I'm useless now," she said through tears. Ben knelt beside her wheelchair and said, "They're wrong. You're the strongest person I've ever met." That moment changed everything. Evelyn realized that Ben didn't see her as broken, he saw her as human. And for the first time in years, she began to believe she could be more than her wheelchair. She asked him to help her with therapy sessions again, to sit beside her as she tried to move her fingers, to hold her up when her balance failed. Some days she made progress, others ended in tears. But Ben was always there, steady as ever. One afternoon, Rosie ran into the room holding a handmade card that said, "Miss Evelyn, you're my hero." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. No one had called her that since before the accident. She asked Ben to wheel her outside, where the tulips had now bloomed into a field of color. As she looked over the garden, the sunlight caught her face, and Ben thought she had never looked more alive. Evelyn decided to launch something new, a foundation to help others with spinal injuries get access to better care. She wanted to give them not pity, but purpose. She asked Ben to help her manage it, and he agreed, though he joked, "You sure you want a grease monkey running your charity?" Evelyn smiled and said, "You're not just that anymore. You're the reason I'm standing again, inside, where it matters." Months later, the foundation opening drew a crowd of cameras and reporters, but Evelyn wasn't nervous. When she rolled onto the stage, Ben and Rosie stood in the front row, smiling proudly. Evelyn spoke with calm strength, her voice echoing through the hall. "People say tragedy defines us, but sometimes it introduces us to the people who remind us how to live again. This is for them." When the applause filled the room, she glanced at Ben and Rosie. The man who had walked into her life just looking for a job had given her something no amount of wealth ever could: hope, family, and faith in kindness again. And for the first time since her accident, Evelyn felt whole. That if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Hearts. Every story we share here is a reminder that compassion can change lives.